The morning sun cast long shadows across the Modoc reservation as 18-year-old Sarah Running Bear prepared for the ceremony that would change her life forever. Her grandmother, wise old Elena, sat braiding sweetgrass while humming ancient songs that had been passed down through generations. Today was Sarah's coming-of-age ceremony, a sacred ritual that would officially recognize her transition from girlhood to womanhood in the eyes of their tribe. Sarah had been preparing for this day since she was 12. She had learned the traditional ways, the stories of her ancestors, and the responsibilities that came with being a woman in their community. Her long black hair gleamed in the sunlight as her mother, Maria, carefully applied the ceremonial paint to her face using patterns that had been used for centuries. "You look beautiful." "My daughter," Maria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Your ancestors would be proud." The reservation buzzed with activity as families prepared for the celebration. Children ran between the houses, their laughter echoing off the mountains that surrounded their small community. The older men sat in circles, smoking and telling stories while the women prepared the feast that would follow the ceremony. Everyone knew Sarah, and everyone loved her pure heart and gentle spirit. Sarah's father, Joseph, was notably absent from the preparations. He had left early that morning, claiming he needed to check on the cattle in the far pasture. But Sarah noticed the worry lines around her mother's eyes and the way her grandmother's mouth tightened whenever his name was mentioned. There had been tension in their house for weeks, hushed conversations that stopped when Sarah entered the room. As the ceremony hour approached, Sarah walked to the sacred grove where her ancestors had performed the same ritual for countless generations. The tribal elder, Thomas Crow Feather, waited for her with other community members forming a circle around the ancient oak tree. His weathered face held the wisdom of his 78 years, and his eyes sparkled with the knowledge of traditions older than memory. "Sarah Running Bear," Thomas began, his voice carrying across the silent grove. "Today you join the ranks of the women who have come before you. You carry their strength, their wisdom, and their sacred duty to protect our people and our ways." The ceremony proceeded with the burning of sage, the sharing of traditional foods, and the reciting of prayers in their native language. Sarah felt the weight of her heritage settling on her shoulders like a warm blanket. She was no longer just Sarah, the girl who loved to read books and dreamed of college. She was Sarah Running Bear, a guardian of Modoc traditions and a bridge between the old ways and the modern world. But as the celebration reached its peak, a commotion arose from the direction of the main road. A black SUV was approaching, kicking up dust as it wound its way toward the community center. Sarah's mother grabbed her arm, her face pale with sudden fear. "Sarah, you need to come with me, now." "But Mama, the ceremony isn't finished." "Now, Sarah." Maria's voice brooked no argument. As they hurried away from the grove, Sarah caught a glimpse of the SUV's occupants, men in expensive suits who clearly didn't belong on the reservation. One of them was talking urgently into a cell phone while scanning the crowd. Their presence felt wrong, like a dark cloud passing over the sun. Elena appeared at Sarah's other side, her ancient hands surprisingly strong as she guided her granddaughter toward their house. "There are things you need to know, child. Things your father should have told you long ago." "What things?" "Grandmother, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. We all should be." Inside the small house, Maria quickly gathered some of Sarah's belongings while Elena sat her granddaughter down at the kitchen table. The old woman's eyes were serious, more serious than Sarah had ever seen them. "Your father is not who you think he is," Elena began, her voice barely above a whisper. "His real name is not Joseph Running Bear. He came to us 18 years ago, injured and running from something. We took him in, as is our way, and he became part of our family. But his past has finally caught up with him." Sarah felt the world spinning around her. "What do you mean?" "Papa has always been here. He's Modoc like us." "No, child, he is not. And the men in that SUV, they are here for him, which means they are here for you too." Before Sarah could ask more questions, the sound of car doors slamming echoed from outside. Maria appeared in the doorway, a small suitcase in her hand and fear written across her face. "They're asking about Joseph, and they're asking about an 18-year-old girl. We have to go, now." Elena stood slowly, her joints creaking with age and worry. She pressed something into Sarah's hand, a small leather pouch that felt warm against her palm. "Your real protection lies not in running, but in understanding who you truly are. That pouch contains items that belonged to your father when he first came to us. Guard them with your life, because the truth they represent could change everything. not just for our family, but for our entire world. As they slipped out the back door of the house, Sarah clutched the leather pouch tightly. Behind them, she could hear voices getting closer, men asking questions about Joseph Running Bear and his daughter. Her coming-of-age ceremony had been interrupted, but perhaps her real coming-of-age was just beginning. The three women moved quietly through the shadows between houses, making their way toward the old pickup truck that Elena kept behind the community center. In the distance, Sarah could see the strangers spreading out, systematically searching each building. Whatever her father had been hiding, whoever he really was, it was serious enough to bring these dangerous men to their peaceful reservation. As they reached the truck, Elena turned to face her granddaughter one last time before they fled. Remember, Sarah Running Bear, purity of heart is your greatest strength, but knowledge of the truth is your greatest weapon. You will need both in the days to come. The engine roared to life and they drove into the growing darkness, leaving behind the only home Sarah had ever known. In her hand, the mysterious pouch seemed to pulse with secrets that would soon shatter everything she believed about her family, her father, and herself. The old pickup truck bounced along the rough mountain roads as Elena drove through the night, her weathered hands gripping the steering wheel with determination. Sarah sat in the middle, pressed between her grandmother and mother, the leather pouch burning like a coal in her palm. None of them had spoken since leaving the reservation, each lost in their own thoughts about the sudden turn their lives had taken. Maria stared out the passenger window, tears silently streaming down her face. She had known this day might come, had seen the worry in Joseph's eyes whenever strangers visited the reservation, or when news reports mentioned certain government investigations. But she had hoped, prayed even, that their quiet life would keep them safe from whatever demons haunted her husband's past. "Where are we going, grandmother?" Sarah finally whispered, afraid to break the heavy silence but unable to bear the uncertainty any longer. "To the only person who might have answers," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. "Your great-uncle William. He lives in the old mining town about 3 hours from here. He's the one who found your father that night 18 years ago." Sarah's mind raced with questions. How could her father not be Modoc? He knew their language, their customs, their sacred stories. He had taught her to track animals through the forest and to read the signs that warned of changing weather. He had been the one to braid her hair for her first powwow and to sing the old songs when she couldn't sleep. "Tell me about the night Papa came to us," Sarah said, turning to look at Elena's profile in the dim light from the dashboard. Elena was quiet for so long that Sarah thought she wouldn't answer. Then slowly the old woman began to speak. It was during the worst storm in 20 years. Lightning split the sky and the rain came down like the world was ending. William was checking on his horses when he found a man collapsed near the creek, more dead than alive. He had been shot twice and he carried nothing but the clothes on his back and that pouch you now hold. Sarah looked down at the leather pouch, feeling its weight differently now. Inside were the only clues to her father's real identity, to the truth that had finally caught up with their family. "He was delirious for days," Elena continued. "Spoken languages we didn't recognize called out names that meant nothing to us. But when the fever broke and he saw our faces, something changed in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition. He begged us not to turn him into any authorities, said that people would die if we did." "What people?" Sarah asked. "He never said. But we could see that whatever he was running from had broken something inside him. So we made him part of our family. William taught him our ways and he learned them well, almost too well, as if he was desperate to become someone else entirely." They drove through a small town where the streetlights cast eerie shadows across abandoned storefronts. The economic hardship that had hit many rural communities was evident everywhere Sarah looked. But Elena didn't slow down, clearly uncomfortable with being in the open where they might be recognized or spotted. "Mama," Sarah said, turning to Maria, "did you know? When you married Papa, did you know he wasn't really Modoc?" Maria wiped her eyes before answering. "I suspected. There were little things that didn't quite fit. The way he sometimes forgot himself and used different words for common objects. How he knew details about places he claimed never to have visited. But I loved him, and love makes you willing to accept mysteries. Do you think he loves us?" The question came out smaller than Sarah intended, revealing the fear that had been growing in her heart since they fled their home. "Oh, my daughter," Maria said, reaching over to squeeze Sarah's hand. "Yes. Whatever brought him to us, whatever he was running from, I know his love for our family is real. The man who raised you, who taught you to be strong and proud and kind. That is who he truly is now, regardless of who he was before. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the temperature dropped and fog began to swirl around the truck. Elena had to slow down, leaning forward to peer through the windshield as the road became increasingly treacherous. "There," Elena said finally, pointing to a dim light flickering in the distance, Uncle William's place. The house was little more than a cabin, built from rough-hewn logs and surrounded by the hulking shadows of abandoned mining equipment. Smoke rose from the chimney, and the warm glow of kerosene lamps filled the windows. As they pulled up, an old man emerged onto the porch, a rifle cradled in his arms. "Elena, what are you doing here at this hour?" "William, we need help. Joseph's past has caught up with him." The old man's face grew grave. He set the rifle aside and helped them bring their few belongings into the cabin. The interior was sparse but clean, warmed by a wood-burning stove and lit by several oil lamps. William gestured for them to sit at his kitchen table while he put on a pot of coffee. "How much does the girl know?" he asked, glancing at Sarah. "Almost nothing, but she has the pouch." William's eyebrows rose as Sarah placed the leather pouch on the table. He stared at it for a long moment before sitting down heavily in his chair. "I was hoping this day would never come," he said quietly, "but I suppose 18 years is longer than most men in his situation could hope for." "What situation?" Sarah demanded, her patience finally exhausted. "Who is my father, really?" William looked at Elena, who nodded permission. Then he reached across the table and carefully opened the leather pouch. Inside were several items: a military dog tag, a small digital device that looked like a flash drive, a photograph of a woman Sarah didn't recognize, and a folded piece of paper covered in what looked like code. "Your father," William said slowly, "was a federal agent working on something called Operation Clearwater. It was a deep undercover investigation into corruption at the highest levels of government. Someone found out who he was and tried to kill him before he could expose what he had learned." Sarah stared at the items spread across the table, her entire world shifting like sand beneath her feet. The dog tag read Agent Marcus Chen, FBI. The photograph showed a beautiful Asian woman holding a baby with Sarah's eyes. "The woman in the picture," Sarah whispered. "Who is she?" William's expression grew even more somber. "That's your real mother, Sarah. Her name was Dr. Lisa Chen. She was Marcus's wife and a research scientist working on classified government projects. She was killed 3 days before Marcus came to us, along with their 6-month-old daughter." "But I'm here," Sarah said, confusion evident in her voice. "The baby in that picture is not you," William said gently. "You were born to us, to Maria and the man we call Joseph. But the grief of losing his family, combined with the fear of being hunted, drove him to embrace his new life completely, perhaps too completely." Sarah felt as though the ground had opened beneath her feet. Nothing made sense anymore. If Joseph wasn't her biological father, then who was she really? And why had those men come looking for an 18-year-old girl if she wasn't connected to Marcus Chen's past? Elena reached over and closed Sarah's hand around the dog tag. "There is more to this story, child. More that even William doesn't know. The truth lies in that device, but opening it will put us all in danger." "We're already in danger," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. "Those men at the reservation, they weren't just looking for Papa. They were looking for me specifically." "Why?" William and Elena exchanged a look that confirmed Sarah's suspicions. There were still secrets being kept, still truths being hidden. But whatever those truths were, Sarah was beginning to understand that they were dangerous enough to kill for. Outside the cabin, the wind howled through the mountains, carrying with it the promise of a storm that would either wash away the lies of the past or drown them all in the consequences of long-buried secrets. The digital device sat on William's kitchen table like a sleeping bomb, its innocuous appearance belying the dangerous secrets it contained. Sarah stared at it while Maria paced nervously by the window, occasionally peering through the curtains at the dark forest beyond. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally arrived, sending sheets of rain against the cabin's windows. "We should leave it alone," Maria said for the 3rd time. "Whatever's on that thing got Lisa Chen killed. It got your father shot and nearly killed. Maybe some secrets are meant to stay buried." But Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from the device. Something deep inside her, some instinct she couldn't name, told her that the answers she needed were locked inside that small piece of technology. The questions that had been building since they fled the reservation demanded answers, even if those answers proved dangerous. "Uncle William," Sarah said quietly, "when Papa first came here, did he say anything about why they killed his wife and daughter?" William rubbed his grizzled chin thoughtfully. He was delirious most of the time, but there were moments when he seemed lucid. He kept talking about something called the Phoenix Protocol, and saying that Lisa had found proof. Proof of what? I never understood. Elena had been silent since they opened the pouch, but now she looked up sharply. "Phoenix Protocol? Are you certain those were his words?" "Yes, why?" "Do you know what it means?" Elena's face had gone pale. "My late husband, your grandfather," she said to Sarah, "worked construction for the government in the 1980s. He helped build underground facilities in remote locations across the country. The project was classified, but he heard things. Whispers about something called the Phoenix Protocol. A contingency plan in case the government ever needed to." Start over how?" Sarah asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify her. "By eliminating threats to national security. Permanently. The theory was that if certain classified information ever became public, it would cause such chaos that the only solution would be to activate Phoenix Protocol and rebuild from the ashes." The room fell silent except for the sound of rain and wind battering the cabin. Sarah looked around at the three adults who had raised her, seeing fear in all their faces. But underneath her own fear, she felt something else growing. Determination. "We have to look at what's on the device," she said firmly. "Those men didn't come to the reservation by accident. They know something about me, something I don't understand yet. And if we're going to survive this, we need to know what we're really dealing with." Before anyone could stop her, Sarah picked up the device and examined it closely. It was designed to look like an ordinary USB drive, but she could see subtle differences that suggested it was much more sophisticated. There was a small biometric scanner where her thumb should go and what looked like a tiny camera lens. "Sarah, don't," Maria started to say, but Elena held up a hand to stop her. "The girl is right," the old woman said slowly. "We've been running blind long enough. William, do you still have that old computer your nephew left here?" William nodded reluctantly and disappeared into the back room. He returned with a laptop that had seen better days but still functioned. As he powered it up, Sarah noticed her hands were shaking slightly. Whatever was on this device had cost 2 people their lives and put her family in mortal danger. But she had to know. "Wait," William said suddenly. "If this thing has government-level security, connecting it to my computer might send some kind of signal. They could track us." Elena moved to the window and pulled the curtains fully closed. "Then we'd better be quick about it." Sarah plugged the device into the laptop's USB port. Nothing happened for a moment, then a simple interface appeared on the screen. A blank box waiting for a password. Below it was a warning message that made Sarah's blood run cold. 3 failed attempts will result in automatic data destruction and location reporting to federal authorities. "He must have told you something," Maria said desperately. "Some clue about what the password might be." "He didn't even know his real name," William replied. "And anything he might have shared," he said in delirium during the fever. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to think. What would a man use as a password for something this important? Something only he would know, but something meaningful enough that he wouldn't forget it even under extreme stress. Then it hit her. She opened her eyes and looked at the photograph of Lisa Chen and the baby. What was his daughter's name? His real daughter who died? He called her his little phoenix, William said slowly. I remember that. He kept saying, "My little phoenix is gone, burned to ashes." I thought it was just the fever talking. Sarah typed "little phoenix" into the password field. The screen flashed red, incorrect password. She tried Phoenix by itself. Another red flash. Her heart was racing now. One more wrong guess and the device would destroy itself and report their location. She stared at the photograph again, studying every detail. The woman, Lisa, was wearing a necklace with a pendant that looked like it might have Chinese characters on it. Marcus Chen was FBI but had an Asian surname. What if the password was in Chinese? William, do you remember if Papa ever spoke any other languages during his delirium? He did, actually. Sometimes what sounded like Chinese, sometimes Spanish. And once he kept repeating something that sounded like Mei Mei over and over. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. In Chinese, Mei Mei could be Mei Mei, meaning little sister. But it could also be a child's pronunciation of phoenix in Mandarin, which was Feng Huang. With trembling fingers, she typed Mei Mei into the password field and held her breath. The screen flashed green, and suddenly dozens of files began appearing. Documents, photographs, audio recordings, and video files filled the screen. Sarah clicked on a folder labeled Lisa's Research and gasped at what she saw. The files showed detailed documentation of illegal human experimentation, genetic modification programs, and something called Project Rebirth. Dr. Lisa Chen had been working as a whistleblower, secretly documenting evidence of government programs that violated every ethical and legal boundary imaginable. But the most shocking discovery was in a subfolder labeled Subject Files. Sarah opened it and found dozens of profiles of children who had been subjects in these experiments. Children who had been modified, enhanced, or in some cases, replaced entirely with genetically engineered duplicates. At the bottom of the list was a file that made Sarah's heart stop. Subject 47, Sarah Chen, Phoenix Protocol Activation Candidate. The room spun around her as the implications hit home. She wasn't just Joseph Marcus's adopted daughter. According to these files, she was one of the experimental subjects that Lisa Chen had been trying to expose. The genetic modifications had been successful enough that she was considered a candidate for something called Phoenix Protocol Activation. Sarah? Maria's voice seemed to come from very far away. Sarah, what is it? But Sarah couldn't speak. She was reading through her own file, discovering that the girl she thought she was, the pure, untouched Modoc girl who had just celebrated her coming of age, was actually something else entirely. Something created in a laboratory as part of a program so secret that people were killed to keep it hidden. The file contained detailed information about her enhanced immune system, her accelerated healing abilities, and most disturbing of all, latent genetic modifications that would activate on her 18th birthday. Today's ceremony hadn't just been a cultural milestone, it had been a biological trigger. Outside the cabin, the storm raged with increasing fury. But inside, Sarah was discovering that the real storm was just beginning. The truth she had demanded to know was more terrifying than any lie could have been. As she scrolled through more files, one final document caught her attention. Emergency Activation Protocol. In case of compromise, Subject 47 must be retrieved immediately upon 18th birthday activation. Subject poses existential threat to national security if not properly controlled. Now she understood why those men had come to the reservation looking specifically for an 18-year-old girl. They weren't just hunting for Marcus Chen's adopted daughter. They were hunting for a weapon that had just been activated, a weapon that looked exactly like her. Sarah stared at the computer screen in horror, her mind struggling to process the devastating revelation. According to the files, she wasn't just a normal girl who had been caught up in her father's dangerous past. She was the past, a carefully engineered piece of it that had been living unknowingly among the Modoc people for 18 years. "I need air," she whispered, standing abruptly from the table. The cabin suddenly felt suffocating, the walls pressing in on her as the weight of her true identity settled into her bones. "Sarah, wait!" Maria reached for her, but Sarah was already heading for the door. She stepped out onto the porch, letting the cold rain wash over her face. The storm seemed to mirror the chaos in her mind, wild, destructive, and impossible to control. Behind her, she could hear Elena, Maria, and William talking in urgent whispers, but their words felt distant and meaningless. Everything she thought she knew about herself was a lie. Her memories of growing up on the reservation, learning traditional ways, feeling connected to the land and her people, were any of those feelings real? Or were they just programmed responses from whatever had been done to her in some sterile government laboratory? She held up her hands in the dim light from the cabin windows, studying them as if seeing them for the first time. These hands that had learned to weave baskets and prepare traditional medicines, had they been designed in a lab? Was her love for her family genuine, or was it simply the result of genetic modifications meant to make her compliant? The sound of the door opening behind her broke through her spiral of dark thoughts. Elena appeared beside her, wrapping a thick blanket around Sarah's shoulders. "Come inside, child. You'll catch your death out here." "Maybe that would be better," Sarah said quietly. "Better than being whatever I am." Elena was quiet for a moment, looking out at the storm-lashed forest. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of her many years and the wisdom that came with them. "Do you remember when you were 8 years old and you found that injured hawk?" Sarah nodded despite herself. She had discovered the bird with a broken wing near the creek and had begged her parents to let her try to heal it. "Your father wanted to put it out of its misery. He said wild things weren't meant to be kept captive even for their own good. But you insisted. You spent weeks caring for that bird, feeding it by hand, keeping it warm, singing to it when it seemed scared." "I remember." "And when its wing healed and you released it back into the wild, do you remember what you said?" Sarah did remember, though she hadn't thought about it in years. "I said that it didn't matter where something came from or what happened to it before. What mattered was what it chose to do with its freedom." Elena turned to face her granddaughter, her weathered hands cupping Sarah's face gently. "Those weren't the words of a laboratory creation, my dear one. Those were the words of a girl with a pure heart, who understood something about the world that most adults never learn. But what if everything I feel is fake? What if my love for you and Mama and Papa is just programming?" "Sarah Running Bear," Elena said firmly, "I have watched you grow for 18 years. I have seen you cry when others were hurt, laugh when they were happy, and fight for what you believed was right even when it was difficult. No laboratory could create the girl who gave her last dollar to help the Broken Arrow family when their house burned down. No government program could engineer the young woman who spent her summer vacation teaching reading to the reservation children." Sarah felt tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know the difference between something artificial and something real. You are real, Sarah. Whatever was done to you, whatever they intended you to become, you grew beyond their plans. You became exactly who you were meant to be." They stood together on the porch for several more minutes, grandmother and granddaughter finding strength in each other's presence. Finally, Elena gently guided Sarah back inside the warm cabin. William had been busy while they were outside. He had printed out several of the most important documents from the device and was studying them with the intensity of a man trying to solve a life-or-death puzzle. "There's more here than we initially saw," he said without looking up. "Sarah, according to these files, there were originally 57 children in this program. Most of them didn't survive the modification process. Of those who did, you're one of only 3 who were successfully placed with families and allowed to develop normally. What happened to the others? Some were kept in government facilities for testing. Others were eliminated when they showed signs of instability or rebellion. But you, child, you were special even among the special ones." Sarah sank into a chair, feeling overwhelmed again. "Special how?" William handed her a document with her photograph attached. "According to Dr. Chen's notes, you were the only subject who showed complete integration of the modifications with your natural personality. The enhancements didn't change who you were. They enhanced who you already were." "What kind of enhancements?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Enhanced immune system, accelerated healing, improved physical strength and reflexes, and something called intuitive data processing, the ability to understand complex information quickly and see patterns that others miss." Maria had been listening quietly, but now she moved closer to Sarah. "That explains so much," she said softly. "How you never got sick when everyone else did. How you healed so quickly from that bad fall when you were 12. How you always seemed to know things you couldn't possibly have learned. But there's something else," William continued, his voice growing more serious. "The Phoenix Protocol isn't just about eliminating threats. According to these files, it's about replacing the current government structure with something new, and subjects like Sarah were intended to be the foundation of that new structure." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. "It means they designed you to be a leader, Sarah. But not just any leader. A leader who could be controlled and directed by whoever activated the Phoenix Protocol. They were creating a new ruling class that would appear to be making independent decisions while actually following hidden programming." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. "So I'm supposed to be some kind of puppet ruler?" "You were supposed to be," Elena corrected gently. "But that was before you grew up as our Sarah, learning our values and developing your own moral compass. They may have given you enhanced abilities, but they didn't count on you using those abilities to think for yourself." Sarah looked around at the 3 people who had raised her. Seeing the love and determination in their faces despite the terrible situation they found themselves in, These people had shaped her far more than any laboratory ever could. So what do we do now? She asked. Those men who came to the reservation, they're not going to stop looking for me. And according to these files, there are others like me out there who might already be under their control. William gathered up the printed documents and slipped them into a waterproof folder. We run for now, but eventually, we're going to have to fight back. The question is, are you willing to use whatever abilities they gave you to stop them from activating the Phoenix Protocol? Sarah thought about the children she had taught to read, the families she had helped during hard times, the reservation that had been her home for 18 years. Then she thought about other communities like theirs that might be destroyed if the Phoenix Protocol was ever activated. Yes, she said firmly, but not as their weapon, as myself, as Sarah Running Bear. Outside, the storm was beginning to weaken, but Sarah knew that the real storm was just beginning. Somewhere out there, powerful people were looking for her. People who thought they owned her because they had created her. They were about to learn that some things couldn't be controlled, no matter how carefully they were designed. The girl they had tried to engineer as a tool of control had instead become something they never intended. A young woman with the power to expose their crimes and the will to use that power to protect the innocent. But first, she had to learn exactly what she was capable of, and that education was going to be more dangerous than anything she had ever imagined. 3 days after fleeing William's cabin, Sarah and her family found temporary refuge in an abandoned ranger station deep in the national forest. The building had been empty for years, but it still had a working well and enough shelter to keep them hidden while they planned their next move. Elena had insisted they couldn't stay with William any longer. His presence on the reservation rolls made him too easy to track. Sarah sat on the station's front steps, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. The peaceful scene felt surreal after everything she had learned about herself. In the past few days, she had begun to notice changes in her body that she had previously attributed to normal teenage development. Her hearing had become remarkably acute. She could distinguish individual conversations from a quarter-mile away. Her eyesight had sharpened to the point where she could read the fine print on signs that were barely visible to the others. But the most unsettling change was in how she processed information. When William had shown her a topographical map to help plan their escape route, she had instantly understood not just the terrain, but the optimal paths for avoiding detection, the best defensive positions, and even the likely search patterns their pursuers would use. The knowledge had simply appeared in her mind, as if it had always been there waiting to be accessed. "Can't sleep?" Maria asked, joining her daughter on the steps with 2 cups of coffee. "Too much to think about," Sarah replied, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "Mama, do you think Papa is still alive?" Maria was quiet for a long moment. They had heard nothing from Joseph since leaving the reservation, and the uncertainty was eating away at all of them. "Your father is a survivor," Maria said finally. "Whatever else he may be, whoever he used to be, he's also the man who has spent 18 years protecting you and preparing you for a world he hoped you'd never have to face. If anyone can evade capture, it's him. But what if they caught him? What if they're torturing him to find out where we are? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. For now, we focus on staying alive and figuring out how to stop whatever these people are planning." Elena emerged from the station carrying the waterproof folder containing the documents from Marcus's device. "Sarah, I think it's time you learned more about what you're capable of. If we're going to fight these people, you need to understand your advantages." They spread the documents across a makeshift table inside the ranger station. Elena had organized them into categories: Sarah's personal file, information about other subjects in the program, details about the Phoenix Protocol, and most importantly, Dr. Lisa Chen's research notes about how to unlock and control the genetic modifications. According to Dr. Chen's notes, Elena continued, "The modifications in your DNA are activated by stress, emotional triggers, and conscious intent. The more you understand about them, the more control you'll have." Sarah studied the scientific documents, surprised to find that she could understand the complex genetic diagrams and technical language with ease. Another gift from her enhanced mind, she realized. "It says here that my immune system can actually adapt to neutralize toxins and diseases in real time," she said, reading aloud. "And my muscle fibers have been modified to be 3 times stronger than normal, but only under extreme stress conditions." "There's more," Elena said, pointing to another section. "Your nervous system has been enhanced to process information at superhuman speeds. That's why you've always been such a quick learner. Why you could master skills that took others years to develop. Maria looked uncomfortable with the clinical discussion of her daughter's abilities. She's still our Sarah, she said firmly. These modifications don't change who she is inside. No, they don't, Elena agreed. But they might be the key to stopping the Phoenix Protocol from being activated with other subjects who weren't as fortunate as Sarah. Before anyone could respond, Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of vehicles approaching from the main road, still several miles away but getting closer. She held up a hand for silence, concentrating on the distant sounds. 4 vehicles, maybe 5, she said quietly, coming up the old logging road. They'll be here in about 20 minutes. How can you possibly know that? Maria asked. I can hear them, and I can tell from the engine sounds that they're government vehicles, SUVs with heavy-duty engines designed for off-road pursuit. Elena was already gathering the documents. We need to move now. As they hastily packed their few belongings, Sarah found herself automatically calculating escape routes, defensive positions, and tactical advantages. The analytical part of her mind was working with cold precision, while her emotional core felt the familiar fear and protectiveness toward her family. There's a cave system about 2 miles north of here, she said, shouldering her backpack. We can hide there until they pass, then double back and take one of their vehicles. How do you know about caves that aren't on any of our maps? William asked, having arrived the night before with supplies and news from the outside world. I don't know how I know, Sarah admitted, but I can see the geological formations in my mind, and I know there's a network of caves with multiple exits. They left the ranger station through the back window and melted into the forest like shadows. Sarah took the lead, moving with a grace and confidence that surprised even her. She could sense the optimal path through the undergrowth, avoiding areas where they might leave tracks or where the sound of their passage would carry. As they climbed toward the hidden caves, William shared the disturbing news he had brought from his reconnaissance mission to town. There are roadblocks on all the major highways, he said quietly. They're checking IDs and searching vehicles. But that's not the worst part. I heard on the police scanner that 2 other reservations have been raided in the past week. They're looking for other subjects like Sarah. Did they find any? Elena asked. One girl, about Sarah's age, from the Lakota reservation in South Dakota. According to the radio chatter, she went with them willingly. Apparently, she'd been having dreams or visions that convinced her she was meant for something special. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. She's been activated and programmed. They got to her before she could develop her own sense of identity. That's what I'm afraid of, William replied. If they can gather enough of the enhanced subjects, they might have the core leadership they need to activate the Phoenix Protocol. They reached the cave entrance just as Sarah heard the vehicles arriving at the ranger station below. Her enhanced vision allowed her to see their pursuers even in the dim morning light, men in tactical gear spreading out in a coordinated search pattern. Military training, she observed. But they're searching like they expect to find a normal family trying to hide. They don't know about my enhanced abilities. That's our advantage, Elena said. They created you, but they don't know who you became. As they settled into the cave to wait out the search, Sarah studied her family's faces in the dim light filtering through the entrance. These people had loved her, shaped her, and taught her the difference between right and wrong. Whatever the government had intended when they created her, she had become something entirely different under their care. I need to contact the other subjects, she said suddenly. If there are others like me out there who haven't been captured yet, I need to warn them. Help them understand what they really are before the government can twist them into weapons. That's incredibly dangerous, Maria protested. It would mean exposing yourself. I'm already exposed. They know who I am and what I can do. But maybe I can reach the others before it's too late. Maybe I can help them choose their own path instead of the one they were designed to follow. Elena nodded slowly. Dr. Chen's files contained contact information for some of the placement families. If we can reach them, we can build a resistance, Sarah finished. Not just against the government agents hunting us, but against the Phoenix Protocol itself. Outside the cave, they could hear voices calling out search commands, the sound of boots on rocky ground, the occasional bark of search dogs. But inside the hidden chamber, Sarah felt something new growing within her. Not the cold analytical abilities of her genetic modifications, but something warmer and more powerful. She was beginning to understand that her greatest strength wasn't her enhanced physical abilities or her superhuman processing speed. It was her capacity for love, loyalty, and moral courage, qualities that couldn't be engineered in any laboratory. The government had tried to create the perfect, controllable leader. Instead, they had created someone who would use every enhanced ability they had given her to protect the innocent and expose the truth. As the search party moved away from their hiding place, Sarah made a silent promise to Dr. Lisa Chen, whose research had made this revelation possible. She would not let the Phoenix Protocol succeed. She would not allow other children to be turned into weapons. She was Sarah Running Bear, daughter of the Modoc people, and she would use every gift she had been given, both natural and artificial, to protect the world she loved from those who would destroy it for power. The hunt was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But now the hunted was preparing to become the hunter. 2 weeks after their escape from the cave, Sarah and her makeshift family had established a hidden base in an abandoned mining complex deep in the Montana wilderness. Using her enhanced abilities, Sarah had identified the location as strategically perfect. Multiple escape routes, natural defensive positions, and isolation from civilian populations who might be harmed if they were discovered. William had proven invaluable in making contact with other families whose children had been part of the experimental program. Through a network of tribal connections and carefully coded messages, they had managed to warn 3 other families and arrange secret meetings with 2 other enhanced subjects who had not yet been captured. The first to arrive was David Crow Feather, a 19-year-old from the Navajo Nation, whose abilities included enhanced strength and an almost supernatural ability to track people across any terrain. He had been living quietly with his grandparents, unaware of his true origins until the government raids began. The second was Maya Santos, 18 years old, and originally from a Pueblo community in New Mexico. Her modifications had given her enhanced reflexes and what she described as combat intuition, the ability to predict an opponent's moves before they made them. Unlike Sarah, Maya had discovered her abilities early and had been struggling to control them. "I hurt someone," Maya confessed during their first group meeting in the mining complex's main chamber. "Last month, when the men came to take me, I fought back without thinking. I moved so fast and hit so hard that I put one of them in the hospital. That's when I knew something was wrong with me." Sarah understood the guilt and confusion in Maya's voice. "There's nothing wrong with you," she said gently. "There's something wrong with what they did to us. But we can choose how to use these abilities." David nodded in agreement. "My grandfather always taught me that strength without wisdom is just destruction. But strength guided by love and justice can protect the innocent." They spent days learning about each other's abilities and sharing their discoveries about the Phoenix Protocol. Elena had become their unofficial strategist, using her decades of experience dealing with government officials to help them understand the political implications of what they had uncovered. According to Dr. Chen's research, Elena explained, spreading documents across the improvised table they had constructed, the Phoenix Protocol requires a minimum of 12 enhanced subjects to function effectively. They have at least 3 under their control now, including the girl from South Dakota. If they can capture or activate 9 more, they'll have enough to begin Phase 1. "What's Phase 1? David asked. Sarah had been studying the Phoenix Protocol documentation obsessively, her enhanced mind processing the complex political and military strategies outlined in the classified files. "Systematic elimination of current government leadership," she said quietly. The enhanced subjects would be positioned in key locations, some as security personnel, others as advisors or staff members. When the signal is given, they would simultaneously eliminate specific targets and then step into the resulting power vacuum. "But that's assassination," Maya said, horror evident in her voice. "Mass murder, exactly. And because we were designed to be perfect leaders, the public would accept us as legitimate successors. We'd appear to be heroes who stepped up during a crisis, not the weapons that created the crisis in the first place." William, who had been listening silently, finally spoke up. "There's something else. I've been monitoring government communications, and there's been unusual military activity around several major cities. They're not just hunting for enhanced subjects anymore. They're preparing for something big." "How long do we have?" Elena asked. Based on the timeline in Dr. Chen's files, they'll need to have all 12 subjects ready within the next 2 months, Sarah replied. After that, the window for activation closes because our modifications become more stable and harder to control as we mature. The weight of this revelation settled over the group like a heavy blanket. They weren't just fighting for their own freedom anymore. They were fighting to prevent a coup that would reshape the entire country. We need to find the other subjects before they do, Sarah said. And we need to expose the Phoenix Protocol to the public before it can be activated. That means going on the offensive, Maya pointed out. We'll have to stop hiding and start hunting them. David stood and walked to the entrance of the chamber, looking out at the rugged landscape that surrounded their hideout. My grandfather also taught me that sometimes the only way to protect your people is to become the thing your enemies fear most. What do you mean? Sarah asked. They created us to be weapons. Maybe it's time we became the weapons they never intended. Weapons turned against them instead of for them. Elena shook her head firmly. No. If you become killers, you become exactly what they wanted you to be. There has to be another way. Sarah had been thinking about this problem for days, and an idea had been forming in her enhanced mind. There is another way. We exposed them using their own methods against them. She pulled out a hand-drawn map of the United States that William had helped her create, marking the locations of known government facilities involved in the Phoenix Protocol. Dr. Chen's files contain enough evidence to bring down the entire program, but only if we can get that evidence to the right people. The problem is, most of the media and government officials who could help us are either compromised or wouldn't believe the story. So what do you propose? Helena asked. We break into one of their facilities and gather additional evidence. Not just documents, but video proof of what they're doing. Then we broadcast it simultaneously across multiple platforms so they can't suppress it. Maya looked skeptical. You're talking about infiltrating a heavily guarded government installation. That's suicide. Not if we use our abilities properly, Sarah replied. They designed these modifications to make us effective leaders and operatives. They gave us enhanced strength, speed, intelligence, and intuition. We can use those gifts to beat them at their own game. It's still incredibly dangerous, Maria said. She had been quietly supportive of Sarah's developing plans, but the idea of her daughter directly confronting the people who had created her clearly terrified her. Everything we do from now on is dangerous, Mama, but this is our chance to end it permanently. If we can expose the Phoenix Protocol and rescue the other subjects who are already under their control, we can prevent whatever they're planning. William spread out a collection of satellite photos he had obtained through his network of contacts. There's a facility in Colorado that appears to be central to their operations. It's where they're likely holding the enhanced subjects they've already captured, and where they're probably coordinating the Phoenix Protocol activation. Sarah studied the photos with her enhanced vision, automatically identifying security weaknesses, guard rotations, and optimal infiltration routes. The analytical part of her mind was already formulating a detailed plan of attack, but the human part of her mind, the part that had been shaped by 18 years of love and traditional values, hesitated. Once she crossed this line, there would be no going back. She would be committed to a path that could lead to victory or destruction, not just for herself but for everyone she loved. Elena seemed to sense her internal struggle. Sarah, you don't have to do this alone. We're family, and family stands together. That's exactly why I have to do this, Sarah replied. Because you're my family, and I won't let them hurt you or anyone else to get to me. David and Maya exchanged glances, then nodded in unison. We're with you, David said simply. Whatever the plan is, we're in. Then let's make sure it's a good plan, Maya added with a grim smile. Because we'll only get one chance at this. As they began planning their assault on the Colorado facility, Sarah felt the final pieces of her identity clicking into place. She wasn't just Sarah Running Bear, the Modoc girl who had grown up on the reservation. She wasn't just Subject 47, the genetically enhanced weapon created by a secret government program. She was something new, a bridge between those two worlds, someone who could use the tools of violence to protect the values of peace and family that she had learned from her people. The government had created her to be their perfect leader. Instead, she had become their perfect enemy, and she was about to show them exactly what that meant. The assault on the Colorado facility began at 3:17 a.m. on a moonless night in late October. Sarah, David, and Maya moved through the darkness like ghosts, their enhanced abilities allowing them to bypass security systems that would have stopped any normal infiltration team. Sarah's enhanced vision let her see the heat signatures of guards through walls, while David's tracking abilities helped them avoid patrols, and Maya's combat intuition warned them of danger before it materialized. They had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment, studying guard rotations, mapping ventilation systems, and identifying the location where the captured enhanced subjects were being held. Elena and William remained at a safe distance, monitoring government communications and ready to broadcast whatever evidence Sarah's team could gather. The facility was larger and more heavily defended than they had expected. As they moved through the underground levels, Sarah's enhanced mind automatically cataloged the security measures and defensive positions. This wasn't just a research installation, it was a military command center designed to coordinate the Phoenix Protocol activation. "There," Maya whispered, pointing to a heavily reinforced door marked with biohazard symbols. "My intuition says that's where they're keeping the others." Sarah approached the electronic lock, her enhanced processing abilities allowing her to understand the system's weaknesses almost instantly. Within minutes, she had bypassed the security and opened the door to reveal a corridor lined with cells that looked more like hospital rooms than prison chambers. Inside the first cell, they found Jennifer White Eagle, the 18-year-old Lakota girl who had been captured 2 weeks earlier. She was unconscious, connected to various monitoring devices and an IV drip that was slowly delivering some kind of sedative into her system. "They're drugging her," David said, checking the IV bag, keeping her compliant while they reprogram her responses. Sarah felt a surge of anger that she channeled into focused determination. This was exactly what Dr. Lisa Chen had died trying to prevent, the transformation of innocent children into controllable weapons. They found 2 more subjects in similar conditions. Marcus Running Wolf, a 17-year-old from Montana whose modifications had given him enhanced reflexes and tactical awareness, and Angela Crowdog, a 19-year-old from Arizona whose abilities included accelerated healing and resistance to toxins. "We need to get them out of here," Maya said, beginning to disconnect Jennifer's monitoring equipment. "Not yet," Sarah replied, her enhanced hearing picking up the sound of approaching footsteps. "We need the evidence first. Maya, you and David get them ready to move but keep them sedated for now. Waking them up could trigger alarms. I'm going to find the command center." Sarah moved deeper into the facility, using her abilities to avoid detection while gathering crucial evidence. In the main command center, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. A detailed timeline showing that the Phoenix Protocol was scheduled to activate in just 5 days. The plan was more comprehensive than anything they had imagined. The enhanced subjects would simultaneously eliminate key government officials in 12 major cities, creating enough chaos to justify martial law. Then carefully placed heroes and other enhanced subjects who had been programmed to appear as saviors would step forward to restore order under a new government structure. But the most shocking discovery was in a secure file labeled Final Phase. After establishing control, the new government planned to eliminate all enhanced subjects, including those who had helped them achieve power. They saw the modified children not as the future leaders of their new world, but as temporary tools to be discarded once they were no longer useful. Sarah quickly downloaded everything she could onto a portable drive, including video surveillance of the sedated subjects and recorded conversations between facility personnel discussing the Phoenix Protocol. This evidence would be enough to expose the entire conspiracy, if they could get it to the outside world. As she prepared to return to the others, alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red, and she could hear the sound of multiple vehicles arriving outside. "Sarah," David's voice came through the comm unit they had improvised from electronics William had acquired. "We've got company, military vehicles surrounding the building." Sarah realized they had been discovered, but something felt wrong about the timing. Using her enhanced analytical abilities, she quickly understood what had happened. One of the enhanced subjects they were trying to rescue had been programmed to alert the authorities if anyone attempted to free them. "It's a trap," she said into the comm unit. "They wanted us to come here. Get the others and head for Extraction Point Alpha. I'll meet you there." But as Sarah tried to make her way back to the holding cells, she found her path blocked by a figure she hadn't expected to see. Joseph Running Bear, the man she had called father for 18 years. standing in full military gear with a weapon trained on her. "Hello, Sarah," he said quietly. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this." Sarah felt her world shift again, but this time she was better prepared for devastating revelations. "You're working with them." "I never stopped working with them," Joseph replied. "Agent Marcus Chen died 18 years ago when they tried to eliminate him for getting too close to the truth. I took his identity and his mission, but I never abandoned my real purpose. Which was what? To monitor and guide the development of the most promising enhanced subject. You." Sarah's enhanced mind was processing this information at superhuman speed, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. The reservation wasn't chosen randomly. You didn't just happen to end up there. You were placed with the Modoc people specifically because their traditional values would shape me in ways that would make me more effective. Exactly. We needed you to develop strong moral principles and loyalty to family. Those traits would make you more trustworthy to the public when you eventually took your place in the new government structure. "But something went wrong with your plan," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. "You didn't expect me to love my family more than your cause. You didn't expect me to choose them over the mission you designed me for." Joseph's expression softened slightly. "No, we didn't. And honestly, Sarah, watching you grow into the woman you've become has been the greatest privilege of my life. But that doesn't change what needs to happen now. You're going to try to reprogram me like the others. I'm going to offer you a choice. Come with me willingly. Take your place in the new order and your family will be protected. They'll be given new identities and comfortable lives far away from all of this. Refuse and they'll be eliminated as security risks." Sarah felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Everything she had learned, everything she had fought for came down to this moment. She could sacrifice herself to save the people she loved, or she could fight for a freedom that might cost their lives. But as she looked at the man who had raised her, who had taught her to be strong and independent even while secretly preparing her for this moment, she realized there was a third option. "You made one mistake," she said quietly. "What's that?" "You taught me too well. You raised me to think for myself, to fight for what's right, and to never give up protecting the people I love. Did you really think I would abandon those principles just because you revealed the truth about who you are?" Before Joseph could react, Sarah moved with enhanced speed, disarming him and pinning him against the wall in one fluid motion. Her strength was far beyond what he had expected, even knowing about her modifications. "I'm not going to kill you," she said as he struggled. "But I'm not going to let you stop me either. Because you're wrong about one thing. I do have a mission, but it's not the one you gave me. It's the one I chose for myself." She secured him with zip ties from his own tactical gear and activated her comm unit. "David Maya, change of plans. We're not just rescuing the enhanced subjects. We're exposing everything tonight live for the whole world to see." "How?" "I'm going to broadcast from their own command center. We're going to show the world exactly what the Phoenix Protocol is and what they've done to create us. Then we're going to give every enhanced subject the choice I had, to be weapons for them, or to be protectors for everyone else." As Sarah made her way back through the facility, she felt the final transformation taking place within her. She was no longer the innocent girl who had celebrated her coming-of-age ceremony just months ago. She wasn't the confused teenager who had discovered her artificial origins. She wasn't even the reluctant resistance fighter who had been forced into this conflict. She was Sarah Running Bear, and she was about to show the world that some things couldn't be engineered, controlled, or corrupted. Love, courage, and the determination to protect the innocent. These were forces more powerful than any genetic modification. The men who had created her as a weapon were about to discover that they had instead created their own destruction. And unlike their carefully planned Phoenix Protocol, her revolution would rise not from ashes and destruction, but from truth, justice, and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. The final phase of her transformation was beginning. The girl was gone. The weapon had been rejected. What remained was something they had never planned for. A young woman who would use every enhanced ability they had given her to tear down their corrupt system and build something better in its place. The Phoenix Protocol would die tonight, but from its ashes something truly free would be born.